Dynamic input is also controlled in the drafting settings in AutoCAD 2010. It is this button down here on the status bar, DYN, Dynamic Input. And again, if you right click over it and go to Settings on the shortcut menu, you can go in and edit your drafting settings for Dynamic Input. It has its own tab, you'll notice, in the Drafting Settings dialog box. Now you'll notice at the moment I have Enable Pointer Input ticked, and also Enable Dimension Input where possible. Now if I untick Enable Dimension Input where possible and go to draw some objects on the screen, you will see the difference when this box is ticked or unticked. If I click on OK now, and what I'm going to do now, I'm going to zoom in here on the end of my drawing here. I've got these two squares here, and what I want is a diagonal X shape in each of them. So I click on the line command, and I'm using my object snap here, left click, but notice now, look, specify next point is only coming up. There's no angle, there's no distance. So if I now go down to DYN here, right click and go to Settings and switch on Enable Dimension Input where possible, and then click on OK, you'll notice now it's exactly the same. It's Enable Dimension Input where possible. So if I go there and click there like that, now when I come away, can you see? It comes on. Because I switched when I was drawing that one line segment, you'll notice it comes on the next line segment. I press enter there to confirm. I then go back to my line command, and when I click on this point here, specify first point, now you'll notice I've got the dimension input, the distance and the angle there. So I can go across to that endpoint there, left click, and enter to finish. Now let's go back to DYN down at the bottom here, and what I'll do this time, I'll right click and go to Settings, and I'm going to switch off Pointer Input, and I'm going to OK it. Now watch what happens when I go to draw a line. I don't have anything. It's coming up on the command line at the bottom of the screen, specify first point, but there's nothing there on the crosshair. That's because I've switched it off, I've unticked it. I can still draw my line, no problem. Endpoint, notice the dimension input comes up. But the first part of the input is unticked in the drafting settings, so I won't get that this time. So I'll finish my line there, and I'll press enter. I'll go back to dynamic input now, right click, settings. I'll switch enable pointer input back on and OK it. If I now draw a line, there's my pointer input, you'll see, specify first point. There's my endpoint snap, left click. To this endpoint snap, left click. Enter to finish. All of my dynamic input showing. Now I want to draw one more line, and it's going to go from this little intersection here to the midpoint snap of this line here. What I'm going to do is switch off dynamic input completely. So I go down to DYN here and just click on it. That switches it off on the status bar. I go to the line command now. I can still get my midpoint snap and my endpoint snap here, as you can see. So midpoint there, left click, to endpoint there, left click. But it only shows the object snaps. There's no dynamic input at all. Notice on the command line though, you can see specify next point, specify next point. Press enter to finish. So with dynamic input switched off, you're having to look at the command line all the time. Dynamic input is there for your heads-up design, so always click on it and switch it on and make sure the settings are set to the display that you want to use in AutoCAD 2010.